certainly special as well. So as I talked about around this time last year, when we go to visit my in-laws in New Jersey, some years ago, they started what's become a bit of an annual tradition, taking in a show at their local regional theater, the Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn. It's a great little theater. They even won a Tony a few years ago for Best Regional Theater. And they've had a number of productions that have started there and gone on to great acclaim on Broadway. While last year's show, Fiddler on the Roof, was very Jewish, I'd say that this year's show, White Christmas, was differently Jewish. I say differently Jewish because while the content of the show is mostly secular, right, all about a famous singing and dancing duo who journey up to Vermont in hopes of a white, snowy Christmas, which they don't exactly find, spoiler alert till the end of the movie, or the show, and really are up trying to pursue a shot at love. So the content's not so Jewish, but its creator, Irving Berlin, has a decidedly American Jewish story. And while the show is ostensibly about Christmas, its title song really is all about a longing for the comforts and familiarity of home. Irving Berlin was born Israel Balin in 1888 in western Siberia. In 1893, he and his family fled to America after Cossacks burned their home down in Russia, eventually disembarking from the Rhineland onto a pier at the just recently opened Ellis Island in New York. His father, Moses, was a cantor, but when he arrived in America, he listed his profession as kosher butcher, which he thought would be a more desirable career. He grew up surrounded by the songs and the melodies of the synagogue. When Irving was only 13, his father died suddenly, and Irving quit school to sell newspapers, trying to help bring in some money for his poor immigrant family. Not wanting to be a burden, he eventually left home, sleeping in a tenement with other homeless kids. In the streets of New York, Berlin started to find music everywhere around him. In 1907, a 19-year-old Irving wrote the lyrics for the first song he sold, Marie from Sunny Italy, which he sold for 37 cents with the help of a friend who was a pianist and composer, because Irving hadn't yet learned how to play the piano or write down musical notation. The beginning of an auspicious songwriting career. When the song went to the printer, they printed Berlin instead of Balin, and as the song grew in popularity, the name stuck, and eventually he changed his name to Irving Berlin, perhaps also as a way to begin to shed some of his Jewish immigrant identity as well, and become more American. His first big hit was Alexander's Ragtime Band in 1911, which achieved international fame. He joined the army during World War I, shortly after becoming a citizen in 1916. While working on a musical for the soldiers that he served with, he came up with a big musical finish, which didn't end up making it into the show, God Bless America, which instead ended up in a drawer. About 20 years later, as the United States prepared to enter World War II, Berlin dusted off God Bless America and gave it to the singer Kate Smith, who first recorded it in 1940. It became an immediate hit and one of the American anthems of World War II. If you listen closely, some say that the last few bars of God Bless America echo the melody of the Shema. Despite the song's immense success, Berlin decided early on that he would not accept any money for it, and instead donated all the proceeds of God Bless America to the Girls and Boy Scouts of America, helping to raise millions of dollars for the organization. Over the course of his career, Berlin became one of the most commercially successful American songwriters of the first half of the 20th century. Admittedly, much of his music was not Jewish, and some of his bigger hits, like White Christmas, seemed to tap into the American melting pot narrative of assimilation and fitting in to a particular version of what it meant to become American. I don't think the irony is lost on any of us that one of the greatest Christmas songs of all time is written by a nice Jewish boy from New York. As one scholar wrote of Berlin, very few composers have come to touch the soul of a nation, reflecting its spirit and traditions. Mr. Berlin ranks among such composers, having become a living legend in his own lifetime. His songs, such as God Bless America and White Christmas, have become woven into the very fabric of American society, touching the lives of generations of Americans. This week's Torah portion, Vayigash, chronicles a different immigrant success story, Joseph. At this moment in the story, Joseph has gone from having been brought to Egypt as a slave and cast into a dungeon to the Pharaoh's right-hand man, a true rags-to-riches story. And now, in the midst of the famine that Pharaoh's dreams through Joseph's wise interpretations had predicted, has spread across the Middle East, not only affecting Egypt, but Canaan as well. In last week's Parsha, Joseph's brothers arrive in Egypt looking for food, not realizing that it is their brother, Joseph, who they're asking. Joseph decides to test them, framing Benjamin and insisting on holding him captive. This week's Parsha opens with Judah pleading with Joseph to take him instead of Benjamin, and eventually, overcome with emotion at his brother's selfless act, Joseph reveals his true identity to all of his brothers. This climactic moment in the story allows the brothers to return to Canaan and their father Jacob with the news that Joseph is alive and well, thriving even in Egypt. With his newfound power and agency, Joseph is able to bring his family to settle in Egypt, in the land of Goshen. There's even a fascinating scene in which Joseph arranges a meeting between Jacob, also known as Israel, the father of the Jewish people, and Pharaoh, in which Jacob blesses Pharaoh, though we don't see what the blessing that he offers is. As one scholar, Naomi Steinberg, points out in the Women's Torah Commentary, this parsha is at its core the story of the possibility for human growth, and as she says, the human capacity for lasting change. As we consider these two stories of change and transformation, and as we begin a new year together, emerging from the holidays a little more full of cookies and maybe a little more full of light as well, may we also hold on to our openness and our capacity for change. Shabbat Shalom.